So thank you very much. We'd like to get going because we'd like to have as much time as possible to listen to Dan and Evelyn. Stand up shorter. Apologize for the low voice. I'm getting over being very sick. But I really appreciate your choosing this particular presentation. One on a very selfish note, because I'm incredibly proud to be friends with these two people who, whenever I ask for their help to share, they do. I taught Dan a long time ago. As a matter of fact, he met his wife. And in my English class in grade 12, I put them in a scene study together, and they're married and they have a child now. So...
All thanks to you, Sheila.
Oh yeah. No, way too much credit. But I would say that if I took credit for that, that would be probably the greatest accomplishment of my teaching career. So, anyway, so to thank you. And Evelyn was a student at Father Henry Carr when I first started, and the thing about Henry Carr is it's a place where no matter whether you're a student there or you're a teacher, whenever you've been connected with it, it seems like you're forever connected. And I'm sure you all feel the same way about your schools. That's the way I feel about mine, even though I haven't been there in a very long time. And we're people who supported each other. We had lots of challenges, but we always went in the trenches and worked together as opposed to working apart. And one of the greatest things that I saw over the years there, because it's been going on for a long time, the school, and some of the teachers have been there, hard to imagine, but 36 years we have teachers on staff there. You don't want to go once you're there. It's a wonderful place. But what happens is that sometimes we're in our roles for a very long time, we get set in our ways, we're doing well, and it takes somebody to come back to see something differently and shake things up. And shaking things up at schools is hard. And so I really appreciate what Evelyn and Dan worked together in their department on, in shaking things up that's getting back to what's really important in our teaching. So I thank Evelyn and Dan. Evelyn now is an instructor at York University downstairs in the CEC and on the York campus to student teachers. And Dan is a member of our 21C department. But I think in their hearts they're always from Henry Carr.
Before we get too far into it, I put this up for a minute. It's obviously not part of our workshop. We do want to do like a little activity that requires you to be, I sent an email out to the 36 people that were on our list. I don't think that that's necessarily everybody who's here. Because we wanted to just sort of get your feedback instantly, so we're going to use Socrative. If you have it on your devices, that's great. If you don't worry about it. If you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry about it. But here's the Wi-Fi info. I'm going to take this down in a second, so if you can get yourselves logged in, that way when we go into the Wi-Fi part, you'll be able to get in. And if you don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. Okay?
Sure.
Okay.
Can they get on there with their phones? You can not be on their phones, no?
Yes.
Okay, well, that would be good. I should be done this. He's the tech part of this. And I'm the emotive one. So hi everyone. Hi. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here. I'm super excited to be sharing our story with you today. And that's what this is. This is our story. Work that we did together at Father Henry Carr as a department, and how we transformed a good department. We had a great team, but everyone's kind of doing their own thing. Fragmented, really. Everyone teaching their own teaching style, and we were collegial, we got along, but whatever you did in your class, what you did, my class, what I did, it was all good. June would come and we all wore ways we would see each other in September. So we go from that to building a collaborative model that I think I speak for both of us when we say it was really the highlight of our careers, taking our teaching to a whole other level that we couldn't have done alone. Okay? We could not have done it alone. We all became better teachers because of it. And it just became an incredible professional experience working with this team of people. So we're going to share our story.
So when we say the word case study, there's nothing scientific about anything that we're going to talk about today. We just wanted to sound smart when we created the presentation. Sheila said something that kind of made me nervous. Presenters, I don't really see us as presenters. We're just here to share our experience. And if there's anything from today that you can take back that you said that will help you to make some kind of change or improvement or whatever, or reaffirm something that you're already doing, that's kind of the big picture goal here. It's not for us to stand up here and say, this is the way everything should work. This is for us to say, here's what we did. It worked for us in our specific school. It may not work for you in your school, in your community, in your department. So we're just going to give you our stuff. And again, at the end, we want to have more of a dialogue between the people who are here at the tables and have a discussion around what works, what doesn't work, and what we can do moving forward in our schools. And we are sort of on the clock because we have to finish at 1:35, so we're going to get right into it, right? Okay, so first thing we want to do is we want to do a quick Socratic. And again, if this was another one of the workshops that I do, I would spend a lot more time with this. If you don't know, I can talk to you afterwards about it, and maybe, I can spend a couple minutes with you. This is going to give us some feedback. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask you to go, if you're on a laptop or using the web browser on a device, go to m.socrative.com, and it's going to bring you to a page that looks like this. If you're on the app, you just got to go to the student app and go in. And the classroom that you're going to be entering today is student success. So once you get logged in there, you'll see that there's actually nothing for you to do yet because I haven't started the activity. What we've got here are 3 really straightforward questions about your experience in collaboration in your career so far. And what we want to do is sort of just lay the foundation for where the people are in this room. Again, not everybody's going to be able to get in. You've never used it before, that's fine. We're just going to get a general sort of discussion started. Okay? So if you're at Socrative, student success is the login. I'm going to get out of here.
Are we able to get onto Google? Or are we able to get? I can't like that stuff. Like I just can't.
Yeah, that's where you want to be.
I can get
Okay, so I'm going to ask you, if you are logged in, to go ahead and complete the 3 questions that are there. If you're not logged in, don't worry about it. Just share with the person next to you. It's not really a big deal. We want to just keep going forward. And what?
3 questions. Just 3.
Okay, on a side note, nerdy teacher here, still want to teach. This is what I would see on my screen as you're going through it. I wouldn't necessarily project this to you if I was doing this in a classroom, but I've disabled your names, so it's not going to say who's actually writing it. And this is what I get as a teacher if you're using something like Socrative. So we're going to get instant feedback to the answers of the question that you're answering right now. So we'll take a couple minutes to just answer them. You can use one-word answers, it's totally cool. Don't worry about like writing essays or anything. Plus my spelling sucks. Hi. Minute or so. If you're not finished, that's fine. Again, if you want to learn more about Socrative, it's pretty intuitive. Just go and set up an account, and it's awesome. And I don't get paid to say that. so even though we're still going through it, I think the first question just sort of asks how much you've experienced it. One of the things that that's always a confusing part is what actual collaboration and cooperation looks like. And I think we talked about, when we were looking back at what we were creating here, we said we didn't really write down or provide a definition of what collaboration or what cooperation is. And I think that's because, in our opinion, for this sort of activity, there really isn't one that works for everybody. Being in different schools and different departments, there's different sort of dynamics that are always changing. And to say this is what it looks like, it would be offensive to somebody who's doing it, but doesn't see it the same way. So we avoided giving a definition. In the second part here, where we actually asked the question, what has been the biggest obstacle you or your department has faced in working collaboratively? Again, we kind of guessed what we thought the answer would be. And if you look through some of the answers, timing. I think time is a common thing here. Yeah. Different priorities and goals, teaching styles, laziness.
Go back up. Oh, go ahead. Hold on. Different priorities.
Others not wanting to participate but willing to share.
Find your way, sorry.
I guess it would be safe to say, and again, a very unscientific, by the way, we're both history teachers, so like numbers and science, that stuff's in a very unscientific way, I guess we would say time is probably the most common one that we would say. Okay, we're going to come back to that in a minute. And then the last question was, what do you think the biggest benefit to working cooperatively and or collaboratively is? I'll let you take a look. Sharing ideas, sharing resources, sharing best practice, even though it doesn't say that in the first one. Student learning, students succeeding, which is good for today, right? Successful students. Better ideas, student success, productivity. Okay, I mean, so there's a lot of commonality there, right? And I think that whether you answer that first question saying you've done a lot of collaborative work, or you answer that first question saying you've done like very little collaborative work, you're still going to know what it looks like when it works, because it doesn't always necessarily mean in a team setting, right? It could be something that you experience with a class, or in a coaching or moderating experience, right? They all sort of overlap. Things that make something successful, cooperatively or collaboratively, transcend the classroom experience, okay? So things that we do with our students, we don't do them as adults. Okay, so anyways, back to our piece.
So, before we launch into our learning goals for this session, we thought we'd give you some time to reflect on maybe some of the learning goals that you would like to identify. What do you want to get out of this session? We're happy to stick with the ones that we have, but we are even happier if there is some burning question that you need answered in the next 45 minutes, and we can address that. So if you could take a minute, either on your own or with a minute, just talk at your table and construct maybe a learning goal that you would like to see happen by the end of this session. Does that sound okay? And then share that with everybody. And see if we're online with ours. So those could be, what do you want to take away from this workshop? And why are you here today? What do you, other than the principal made you come? Any other people want to share with us? Anybody want to share something that they'd like to tell us? Please.
We're going to take a minute, folks. I know that we have built in some time. Again, there's no script for us to follow today, but we do want to give you time a little bit later on to actually have a structured discussion, because we have a couple things to show you that maybe you can reflect on. So we want to get into a little bit of a discussion about some of the other groups or people's goals before we move forward.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so we're going to start this table.
I'm here more practically speaking to see what sort of practical structures or protocols can we put in place that would get around that time question, which is the easy pop-up question, right, is time. Because if you give them the time, then the harder question is, how do we actually create a culture of collaboration? Because the easy one is just, we don't have time for it, so we're not going to do it. But is there structures that people have in place that can answer that question? And then we can get to one.
Right?
Practicality, usefulness, right? Yes.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you.
What does it look like? What does collaboration look like? As Dan?
Yeah.
I know. I wasn't sure if I could say Dan or does it have to be Daniel?
No, you weren't.
I was actually Daniel, and I was just right. So, as you said earlier, what it looks like in one school, it is all great, it may not work in another school, or even in the same school for different departments.
Yeah.
So, when you observe them working together in a group, are they actually working collaboratively?
And I think that's actually a really valid question, because in our specific case study example, our department was working very collaboratively. If you ask other departments that were going through the same process, their answer might not be the same. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a school-wide thing, and it's a lot of work, especially for the people that are in leadership roles, right? So it's not an easy thing. Maybe one more sort of burning goal that we had here that you want to take away from this? That's it. Practicality is a big one.
I think self-reflection. I think that for this to really, for us to take away something back to our school or classrooms, we really need to know where we are at. What is our kind of comfort zone? How do we push ourselves to kind of walk that line? Because if we don't understand that, then we don't know our starting point. It becomes futile. It doesn't help us for our own practice, our own reflection.
Yeah, the question, where am I now?
Yeah.
Yep, and we're going to do that. So again, what we're gonna do is the learning goals that we came up with. I know it's not really a learning goal, so we're not going to be able to assess it at the end here. But we want to identify what we sort of constructed as the pillars of collaboration in our department. So what does it look like? For us, it looked like this. These were the elements that were there. To compare for you now, to compare our experience and what your current or past experience has been, and to start that self-reflection piece. You know, where am I? Where's my department? Maybe we think we're doing it, but maybe we could do more. And then again, at the end, to assess the validity of those things that we constructed, those pillars that we're going to talk about, and see if they work for you, and see what your next steps are going to be when you do go back to your school. You're here for a reason. You're all from your schools. You're going to go back to your schools and be those agents, right? That make the press, that push to say, we need to do this.
And
That's
here's
why
where
we're
we
here.
start. And maybe we can start here.
Right? Even if it's a discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. We can start a conversation. Okay, so we want to talk about where we're coming from and how this kind of started. So really, I want you to know that when we sat down a couple weeks ago and started reflecting. This is what we're reflecting. Because as she said, neither of us are at par currently, which is kind of interesting. So we both had this fabulous experience of collaboration, and now we moved on to other things. So we had to really stop what we were doing and go back and reflect. How did this start? Where did this come from? So we came, we're history again, we're history teachers, so we came up with a spark. You know, we really went back and said the spark was, there were a couple of things that were happening in our school, our situation, that led us down this road, I think, safely say. So one was that we were given PLC time. So we had structured time, 1 we stayed on this goal for a couple of years, which is what we needed, because it took us a full year just to wrap our heads around learning goals. So here we are at this hour, you know, you're with your department every Monday, and you're like, okay, that's what we gotta do, guys. This is, how are we going to do this? So as a department head, I really, and I just came back from mat leave, right? Because you all started this a year before me, and I came in, and I'm like, okay, what do we do? Learning goals. Okay, let's do learning goals. I need to walk the walk. I need to wrap my head around this. I need to figure out, because I'm teaching in the classroom, I need to figure out how does this work for us as a department. So I needed a team to kind of help me out here. We needed to do this together. I knew that we needed to work on this together for us to make it work and to make it all. The third thing I want to say, I do want to say this piece, is that at our department head meetings were really structured around talking about these goals. Like we did PD in our department head meetings. We did PD, we had a book, we read PD. We got one of the Marzano ones, the framework, the Marzano all learning goals, and we had read chapters together, and we fought, like I fought. I was fighting. We were fighting with the principal, because, right, he's like, what do you mean? What do you mean this is a learning goal? This is what I think a learning goal is, because we didn't know what it was. We didn't know, we've never done this before. So I'd be fighting with the principal, like, not fighting is strong words, having very passionate, committed conversations. And we would have these conversations. Then I go on Mondays with the team, and I'm fighting with the team. I'm like, come on, people, we can figure this out. This is not a learning goal. What's a learning goal? I thought that was one. That's not one. Right? So we had a year of this.
And that's why, I know you're maybe not showing as well, but that's why I put that little symbol of the two arrows going in different directions. Because there was, thank you. Not only was like Evelyn getting pressure from her superior, we were getting pressure from her as a department. But the key was, and this is the thing, like you could say at every school, we're going to give you an hour a week to do something, but what are you going to do with that time? There was an accountability piece. There was accountability, number one, to the team members. Because if I was working on the grade 9 applied geography, and everyone was working on the grade 9 academic geography, and I knew that I was teaching academic next semester, I needed those learning goals so that I could teach the course properly second semester. So there's accountability within the group in that way. Number two, there was accountability to Evelyn as our department head. And that was built partially out of the relationship that she fostered and nurtured with the team. But we did our job. We gave her the learning goals that we had been asked to create, and then she could go upwards to the principal. So there was an accountability. It wasn't just fluffy, let's all sit around and talk about teaching. There was a point to every single session when we were working.
Any questions so far?
And the reason that there's two arrows is
Sorry, I just wanted to ask, are the learning goals co-created with the students, or were you coming up with them as a department and then setting them and going into the classroom and establishing learning? This is an excellent question.
Okay.
we created it.
Okay, so this one.
This was 2010.
Okay, yeah, so part of the accountability piece, one of the first things we did was we divided and conquered. We had, within the team, we said, okay, y'all are going to be the geography team. So we had 2 people take on the geography. We took on the history. Other people took on well, that's pretty much it, the history, the civics, and careers. Because we had to trust each other. Because one word of leadership is, right, I would do it all. I would do all the course outlines. Here you go, here's what you're teaching. With the assessments, the formative assignments, here you go, here's what you're teaching. Okay, it could have been like that. There were some department heads who chose to go that route, be very, authoritative, not my style. We're going to divide and conquer. So, I'm sitting down in a coffee shop with the grade 10 curriculum, which I'm going to tell you was the first time, 4 years ago, first time, I've been teaching 15 years, that I actually looked at the curriculum. Okay, I'm going to be honest, right? How do we build classes, friends? From last year, what did you do last year? Give your outline last year, what did I do last year? And the textbook. And we don't actually look at the curriculum. So I did. I actually looked at it. And I sat there by myself at this coffee shop, and I am seeing learning goals. Wow, this is a learning goal. They have, identify, describe, explain, assess, evaluate, and Where do you get that?
Yeah, where do you get that?
Like, that was a aha moment for me. This is ridiculous. Okay, so I gave him a curriculum. I said, here, these are overalls, these are specifics. Which ones we want to do? We have to do the overalls. We have to assess the overalls. Here are the specifics. So we chose them together. But that I had to go through that first year myself, and us as a department getting comfortable with this. And there's a lot. We learned also that there's a lot of flexibility in the curriculum, which we didn't necessarily know, which was our Saturday session. That was, however, highlight this moment for you to talk about.
Yeah, the beautiful thing about planning an hour-long workshop is that instantly you lose 10 minutes at the start.
I know, sorry.
And we, again, I know we said we want to let you talk, and we're defeating the purpose. So again, what we,
Yeah, that's it.
instantly when I thought, because we can talk all day, really, as you've seen. The first thing I thought of, because I'm a big believer in documenting student work and having students reflect on their learning. So I said, let's go back to the people that we worked with and have them reflect on the process. So I poured a couple iPads and brought them and dropped them off at the school, and we said, here are 3 questions, can you just answer these? And looking back, now this is 2 years, well,
I've been out 2 years.
or so looking back on the process. And I put together a really quick video. I might skip the first part.
Sure. So these are our teammates. These are our teammates who are still at Edinburgh and who are still implementing pieces of what we did amongst, with each other. They're the team.
So these
the rest of our team.
these 4 pillars or concepts or whatever you want to call them, these are sort of the 4 things that are evident in the video. Evelyn wanted to make this a worksheet, and I was like, no. So you can think about sort of these 4 things, and then as you're watching it, think about if we're actually full of it, or if these don't apply, or if something's missing from their discussion. But the idea of accountability and interdependence that I kind of spoke about initially from the team itself and from upwards and downwards. Leadership. I know she doesn't like to talk about it, but Evelyn is a very, very good leader. And if it wasn't for her role as a leader of the department, we wouldn't have been in the same place that we were. And at the same time, the principal that we had at the time was an excellent leader as well. So we had for our department, 2 very, very good leaders. You cannot, in my opinion, you can't take that away. We've talked a lot about these buzzwords here, so we're going to move on. And then ownership of the programs. At the end of the day, every department in our school was charged with the same task of learning targets. We, for whatever reason, and you can form your own opinion, we took ownership of it and said, we're going to do this. And that's what made it much more powerful for us, whereas other teams were just kind of like, oh, whatever, we're just going to go along with it and submit the bare minimum. So anyways, again, this is kind of raw, so you're going to have to apologize. And if the sound is great, is the sound going to work here, guys? Yeah? My former students at the back.
Those are former students.
Not proud of them. No, not
No, sorry.
I love you, Jacob. You're the best. All right, saddle. Yeah, no, yeah, no, of course not.
There we go.
They muted me when I was teaching.
They're like,
Hello, I'm Rosanna Kilbrother.
Really quiet.
Peers. Individuality is professional.
is it really quiet?
Yeah, it's really cool. So what we asked them were,
I don't know how.
we kind of asked them, what were your reservations, or what was your mentality going into the process? And then we asked them, what sort of at the end, what was the moment that changed it for you? What went off where you said, okay, we can do this? And that's why we have the 2 arrows, because we weren't on board. I was not on board with this at the beginning. I was like, just leave me alone. I know how to teach. I'm good. I don't want to share my stuff, because they're going to echo some of those sentiments. So what are your fears? What was the moment? And then what kind of advice would you give to people that are going to take this on, or are going to try this moving forward? And I apologize if it's not super
Around how grassroots it was. I think it was at first, because I didn't really give it a chance. I kind of assumed that it was being imposed on us from higher ups, if you will. And because of that, I was hesitant to even try it. Say, oh, this is not going to work. I thought of it as some kind of a fairy tale image of teaching where, okay, we're going to do all this for all these students, and then automatically they're all going to become better. Now, that was my biggest reservation, was that the biggest problem I had was actually was within me, was actually opening myself. And I know that sometimes as teachers, a lot of times we sometimes can get stuck in our ways, and sometimes we kind of can, not be open to new ideas.
So initially, it was hard to get our heads around the fact that we're going to work together as a group to come up with a plan that will run in all of our classes simultaneously. Because when you grow up and want to be a teacher, you're basically, okay, it's my classroom. I want to do what I think is going to be great for the kids. And then you sit down with a group of people who are not you, and you're like, okay, if Rebecca's doing it, and Bashir's doing it, Daniel's doing it, Evelyn's doing it, we have to do it the same because the kids should be given the same curriculum. So initially it was kind of hard. It's like, oh, I'm going to be losing my independence as a teacher. I'm going to be, what am I going to be doing in terms of, I'm losing that me factor. For me, it was one day that we sat down together. It was actually Saturday. We called it CLC Saturday. That we all came in on a Saturday on our own time. I think that made it a little bit more real to us. And we just dissected the curriculum, each strand by strand, and if we needed it, not needed it, and where would it fall in terms of category, what skills would be used for that. And honestly, that was the day that we all sat down. We had like the aha moment where everyone was on board as part of the department, and it was just great. From then on, it was smoother sailing than it was initially. Of course, there's going to be drawbacks, and there's going to be like some stuff that hiccups along the way. It's a new process.
And I tried it, myself and my department, we tried it. And to be honest with you, I became a firm believer very quickly when I started to see the results. It wasn't just, okay, this kid is going to, or this student is going to automatically get it. You have to work hard, and the student has to work hard in order to kind of understand the concepts and the skills that need to be taught.
The advice we can offer any other departments or school communities who would like to implement this approach is to firstly trust one another. Trust in your colleagues' abilities, expertise, and what they can bring to the table.
Another important part is dialogue. It doesn't need to be in a formal setting at specific designated department times. Quick conversations with your colleagues in the morning, during lunch, after school, helps know that you're doing a great job and allows for input and feedback from one another.
To do this is to give it a chance. It won't work the first time you do it. All right, it'll take work. It will take, actually, it will take some time for departments to kind of formulate ways of going through this model. And yeah, give it a chance. Honestly, that was my biggest hurdle personally was not giving it a chance.
Make sure you sit together as a group, because we had a department head who actually wanted our input. And it was important that it wasn't just top down. Just like in a classroom, it can't be just from us as the teachers down to the kids. It's collaborative. And what it was great because ideas were bounced around. And what we did was you have to know what the end goal is. And it can't be personal. It can't be a personal where it's just about you, the teacher. It's about what's best for your kids. And if your feathers will be ruffled, I know mine were. I know people in my department were like, oh, what is this? But at the end of the day, when not only do we buy into it, now we're kind of feeling that if it's not the same as we had before, then it's kind of, okay, we need to get back to it. So it kind of grounded us, and every time we stray, we want to go back to that because it's so important and it works so well, and we can't even imagine our classes not doing it anymore.
Okay. Couple pieces. Here's what. Any comments about that? Okay. Here's what this looks. Number one, there's a lot of conversation at the CSC Mondays. We had those difficult conversations. Like, for example, and I would just come with a question. What would happen if? Like, here's the thing. Are we okay? I asked the department. Are we okay with 3 sections of geography, and the kid who's in this class gets 5 tests, the kid who's in that class gets 2 tests, and the kid in that class gets 10? Are we okay with that? As a department, do you think that's fair to the student? And let's start with that conversation. So we really engaged in some difficult talk, and there was debate. There was a lot of debate because some people like the test. Some people think, we shouldn't have tests at all. We're going to have a spectrum of philosophies. So we need to open up those Mondays as space for us to talk. Because again, I didn't feel comfortable mandating anything. We did have a mandate, and our mandate was to use learning goals as success criteria. However, our mandate was also to improve student learning. We were constantly, we were told, we were given on our Mondays after every on your assessments? How about you guys just the two of you? So now you're not collaborating with 5, 6 people. You're just collaborating with another person. So maybe you gotta start small. How about the two of you sit down and talk about your assessments? How many assessments are you going to do? And are they going to be the same? Okay? And then we come back after a couple of Mondays and say, okay, now bring your assessments. How do the kids do? How do they do? Have that conversation. Bring them to the table. Did everybody bring their stuff every time? No, people are you're dealing with people, and you're dealing with adults, and this is really hard to get people to come now share their assessments with others. But yeah, this is the point. Let's share our assessments, and you as a department head, you gotta be the first. This is what I'm doing in my classroom. Please give me feedback. You have to lead by example. This is what I'm doing in my class. What do you think of this? He cut up my handouts all the time. He was like, this is terrible. Okay, can you fix it for me? Let's fix it. Fix it for me. And that's another piece. We have to get comfortable using each other's work in the sense that you're going to fix it for me, and we have to decide, okay, we're doing this assignment, right? Yeah. We're doing this one? Really? We're going to do this one. So,
in the old days, I would have read down the chart that she created here.
So,
learned how we put it together.
but I get comfortable with using each other's work, but having that conversation of, well, I really want to keep this test. I think this is really important. Okay, we'll keep this. But at least you're collaborating, you're dialoguing with somebody else in the department. That was really key. Really key. And a lot of this, even though the goal was to have learning goals as criteria and to improve student results, that was it. That's all we got. And that's a lot of our discussions at the department head meetings was this argument, just tell us how to do it already. I'd say, Mike, just tell us how to do it. And he refused. No, we got to figure this out. Which was great, because in the end, we had to figure it out. We had to own it. It had to make sense to us. And that was hard. That took time. So you have to stick with it. It does not happen overnight. If you get anything out of this session, please get that. It has to take time. But it's like we've said about the matrix. Once you take the green pill, you can't go back. I cannot teach any other way. I can't work any other way. I was by myself. I would take this much time. That was the blue pill. The blue pill.
Okay, so in terms of, just before we turn it over, in terms of,
Does that make sense, everybody? Does that make sense?
When you talk about practicals, that's the thing that when I go to a workshop or if I'm delivering a workshop, someone says, what's the practice? The one thing that I would say that they touched on, and I didn't really think about it until we reflected on it, was this idea of like the connection of ego and taking things personally and having a discussion about academics and about professional development that's not about you as a person. And I think that, like, how do you do that? I think you have conversations, you have team building, you do those kinds of things that allow people to be vulnerable to say, have a conversation about what they think, but not take it personally when you say, I don't like your handout, right? To get over ourselves. And it affects so much more about our teaching when we can say, you know what, I don't know the answer to everything. And I'm going to open myself up. You know what I would say with my classes? And they're here so that they can say that I'm not lying. I don't know the answer to that question. That takes a lot of guts for a teacher to do that. And when you sit with your colleagues and say, I don't know, or I'm open to feedback, or tell me what you think, that takes a lot of team. So there has to be something built in there. And getting over ourselves is a huge one. Anyways, okay, so there's a couple things that we want you to talk to each other about. If you're sitting with all people from the same school, it probably won't be as effective. If you're with people from other schools, this is going to be great. So we've listed some guiding questions here for you. I know that we'll probably go back to, we don't have time, whatever. Let's stay positive with this. Let's frame this discussion around, instead of like saying what we don't have, let's say, what can we do? Okay? So, look on those 4 categories that we've talked about, or anything that we've talked about, and sort of address areas that you think maybe for your school or your department might be missing. Maybe ones that you think are irrelevant or overstated. And then the last piece is really the important one. So you've listened to us give our story. It's one story. What are your next steps? Because that's the important piece. You're going to go back to your schools, and if nothing happens in the next 8 to 10 days, this is just going to die, and you're not going to talk about this until September next year, right? When you return to your school, what is one little thing that you're going to try to take from this and put in place? Whether it's even just you talking to your colleagues, right? If you're not a department head, you're just working in a department, and you feel like you don't have the ability to control a big sort of thing, How am I going to talk to my colleague that I don't normally collaborate with? How can I do something differently in the next week to 10 days? Right? Yeah. And then, talk about the challenges or obstacles, but don't just say these are all the things that are going to make this fail. Let's say, here's an obstacle, so we don't have time. What's one way we can get around it? For every negative, let's come up with a positive or a couple positive solutions that might help address that. Okay? And then, yeah.
How much time?
I guess we have until we're done, more or less, right? 1:35, should
1:35 we're done.
So you have exactly 7 minutes to have a really, yes. Okay, we leave it to you now.
How's it going? Good? We almost done?
It's time to stop, but the day must go on. My challenge would be that if you're having a good conversation here, take that back with you, because the conversation is going to start and hopefully lead to something more tangible, something bigger, something that you can actually do in your schools when you get back there. Evelyn and I, because we're both, I'm very realist. She's kind of idealist. I mean, here are some of the things that maybe came out of your discussions. Maybe you're going to think about it more as you get deeper into this. What is the cost? And the cost means like the physical cost, the emotional cost, the money cost. What is the potential outcome and or benefit of cooperation? How much work is required to create some level of interdependence within your group? Because really that interdependence piece is what makes it essential. If they need each other on the team to do their job and to collaborate and to cooperate, then it makes it that much more substantial and lasting. Okay? I'm going to email this out to all the people that I emailed out yesterday. So I'll email this presentation to you because there was a couple things. I included just a couple little things. I just happened to be, once we started working, I just happened to take a course on cooperative learning. And the way that this whole course worked for me was all the things that I had done in coaching and in moderating and things like that, I looked at it and said, wow, I'm actually fulfilling some of the principles of what cooperative learning are. And you would do the same if you look back and say, oh, wow, that's interesting. So there's an article here that you can read if you want to when you have time in the summer. On social interdependence and the benefits of it, how to maybe try and get it to be brought in. And then Evelyn's lovely 4 pillars handout that we were both very proud of is there. And I am very proud of it. I think it's cool. I'm proud of myself for going with it.
Last thing, just a couple things for you kids also to consider. Think about, we were having this wonderful conversation with the religious here. Think about your physical space. And principles is also maybe something you might want to think about. And if you need to reconfigure, people need to be together. We talked a lot about, we were in the same workroom. Our department was in the same workroom. Our desks were across from each other. The geography people's desks was near each other. We talked on the Mondays, but we talked throughout. But we were constantly checking with each other. We saw each other all day, every day. And it was a constant collaboration. And it builds the interdependence, the social piece, right? How's your weekend? What's going on? What else some music? They play the music. They might like their Hall Notes. They play the Hall Notes. And then it was like, okay, from there now we can have the hard conversation about assessments. we had to spend time together. So if your department at school and your departments are all over the place, have that conversation maybe with your staff. I don't know, reconsider the space, the physical space of having your departments working together. That was really important for us. And I think we were able to definitely talk about that. Physical space is part of the structure. And I think that's kind of big.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
So, on behalf of all the participants today, I'd really like to thank Evelyn and Dan for sharing their story with us. It took a lot of time and commitment, and I know it's hard to imagine a department that would meet on a Saturday at somebody's house to talk about curriculum, but the reality is that exists. And it can exist where there's relationship among people and they have a common goal. So, and putting themselves out there. Sharing your work with somebody else is pretty tough because of the criticism that could come and not having nice handouts according to somebody else. But the benefits are huge. And I think the last thing I just want to say is that the benefits at that school with those students were huge. I think because they're modest, they don't talk about the huge benefits that they saw for their students. But I think you can imagine what it would be like to be a student in one of their classes or one of their colleagues where students understood that all of their teachers talk to each other and the amount of work they're putting in to having a really great class every day. So thank you very much for your contribution today. So we're going to start the final session of the day in about 2 or 3 minutes. Ron's going to come back with his final address of the day and his commentary from what he's learned from our schools.